Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Thank you, Sarah. Senator Rand Paul today made a strong attempt to vitiate the credibility of former CIA Director John Brennan, saying that he's, and I quote, monetizing his security clearance and that it should be removed from him. He even called on the president to do this. Will the president consider Senator Paul's suggestion and call for the removal of former Director Brennan's security clearance?
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe. The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances. Making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate, and the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
Now, the president is threatening to punish Brennan and Comey and Clapper for saying things about him that he doesn't like. Is that presidential?
The president is exploring these mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases actually monetized their public service and their security clearances, and making baseless accusations of improper contact with Russia or being influenced by Russia against the president is extremely inappropriate. The president contends that the fact that people with security clearances are making these baseless charges provides inappropriate legitimacy to accusations with zero evidence.
So
when we have further updates on that front, I'll certainly let you know.
Free speech he doesn't like, and he wants to punish them for it.
No, I think you are creating your own story there. The president doesn't like the fact that people are politicizing agencies and departments that are specifically meant to not be political and not meant to be monetized off of security clearances.
A separate question after, but to follow up on that, isn't the president doing exactly what you just said the president doesn't want all these people doing? Politicizing matters of national security by going after his political enemies?
No, the president's not making baseless accusations of improper contact with a foreign government and accusing the president of the United States of treasonous activity when you have the highest level of security clearance, when you're the person that holds the nation's deepest, most sacred secrets at your hands, and you go out and you make false accusations against the president of the United States. He thinks that is something to be very concerned with, and we're exploring what those options are and what that looks like.
What about President Obama and Vice President Biden and their security clearances? Are they on the list as well?
I'm not aware of any plans for that at this point. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you on the South Lawn.
It is Tuesday, the 24th of July of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's right. Do not put any Old Bay in this dish. Okay? Clam bakes, I'm fine, but Keep the Old Bay out of this other stuff. Hungarian hot paprika, I think that's the go-to. All right, just go for it. Just a touch, a little less than a dash, okay? And I don't know, is a touch? Yeah. Dash is. I actually always thought a dash was less than a pinch, but I may have to look up on the colloquial dictionary of culinary terminology and find out they're probably equal. Hey, did you get your security clearance pulled yet? Do not say anything about Herr Fuhrer. He gets very mad, and his hair gets wild. So, yeah, I suppose that a president is allowed to do that. I guess this one is, and we'll see for how long. I will relish, and I know it's not going to ever happen, because, you know, there's different tiers of justice in our society, and I don't think Donald Trump's going to jail. I want him to be, but I don't think he'll go. Because there'll be this argument, oh, we can't, like, take sovereigns and just, like, throw them in jail willy-nilly. Well, we have a story coming up in the second half at the chef's table today that actually addresses how certain monarchs were arrested and had their heads lopped off, you know, for being dickheads to their subjects. I'm just saying. It's precedent. So I may get lucky, and this guy will go to jail, because this is getting a little bit overboard now. Okay, I love how they call it an enemies list. It is sort of an enemies list, but the excuse of that's Sarah Sanders, and I love how Sarah Sanders is just so equivocating. And you got to tell, you have to understand, when she says a negative, it's a positive. All right. But first, the first point I want to make is the idea that Clapper et al. Are monetizing their government service, while Trump collects money for going to his golf course, because, you know, it's for security and all that, and he pockets the stuff. You know, the Secret Service gets X amount of dollars. I know that there's some system in which it gets run through Trump, and, you know, say an agent is getting paid, I don't know, we'll say $170,000 a year, $150,000 a year maybe. Trump's going to take, I don't know, maybe 30,000 of that, maybe more. Depends. So, but you don't want to do that too much with your security detail. They may just, I don't know, not have an incentive to secure. Which reminds me, another subject that we need to talk about is that the Russians, you know, did hack into our electric grid and other aspects of the infrastructure. You know, like being able to turn on and off water valves and stuff like that at water treatment plants and reservoirs. So, there's some chatter out there that those efforts that have already been put in place are now being utilized and ramped up. I mean, there could be an attack. I don't know. We'll see. The hardest thing I have, the hardest aspect of this that I have when speaking with, you know, people who are, how shall I put it delicately, deplorables or low information voters. That's what I meant to say. Low information voters from a certain spectrum of the political arc. Is that, you know, you try to give them facts, but it just doesn't get through. So, trying to convince them that we are under attack. I mean, their idea of attack is, you know, really, their idea of attack, this is what gets me, is that if a black or brown person spray paints some graffiti on a wall, that should warrant the nuke option. I'm serious. Just nuke them. But, you can't convince them that we're under attack because it's a cyber sort of attack and they don't see it. They need to see physical evidence, bombs exploding. I fear that, because we've already had blackouts. They've already tested their strategy. You don't think that they haven't already? And those blackouts, just occurred because, it was hot. I always tried to figure out, why was it every rainy day BART would shut down? I don't remember it shutting down, for decades. And then suddenly it was shutting down all the time. BART that's the Bay Area Rapid Transit System in the San Francisco Bay Area. What was that all about? Or maybe a hot day and stuff. And suddenly it was it's not as if there were never any hot days before that. And, I just noticed it in the area that I moved to care for my mom. I asked around and people go, yeah, sometimes we have these blackouts, but they seem to be happening a lot. Yeah, what's that all about? Well, it could also be that we're just moving into being a third world country and has nothing to do with the Russians attacking our electric grid. But they have the capabilities. They've already tested their systems. It's already been documented. And it's not coming from me. It's coming from our intel services. There is chatter out there. So, I don't know, get the generators. But then they're gas generators. And what are you going to do when they can't get gas? I don't know. We'll have to learn, won't we? Well, so much in the news today, we're just going to have to dive right in to tell you quickly what's on the rest of the menu here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Accidentally released documents show the Interior Department cravenly prioritized industry over public lands. Yeah. Drilling, mining, strip mining, mountaintop removal, all that has value. They just conveniently didn't include people who like to hike, fish, and buy all the stuff that allows them to do that. They just didn't compute that value in. How nice. Republicans hope midterm voters forget all about repeal and replace Obamacare because they love Obamacare. And they're hoping they forget it. Why? I have to go fund me now to be able to get my new kidney. And half of the New York Daily News staff were just laid off in Tronc's, that's the publishing company, by the way, ongoing effort to destroy all local news. Yep, they're on a mission from God. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Russian spies have always loved infiltrating American universities. Yeah, I always thought that I was being, maybe a honeypot, from Red China. Thought that a couple of times. And I got to tell you, a couple of times from the former Soviet bloc. While it was the Soviet bloc. I always thought it. But I didn't have any special knowledge. So they just moved right on past me. And rather than Mussolini, Trump's most apt parallel is the English monarch who secretly colluded with a foreign enemy in 1670. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll find the chat room link on the rightish of the page down there. Kelly Lincoln, our roaring girl, monitors that quite diligently throughout the day, and that's a good way to get a hold of us. To the leftish of the chat room link are the contribute donate buttons. But in this particular time period, if you would go to links provided on my show notes and links diary on Daily Kos or on the various social media platforms, if you would go to those links provided and push a few shekels towards Kelly for Netroots Nation 18 so that she can eat. Yeah, it doesn't have to be an exorbitant amount, but if you can help by lunch, dinner, and maybe even breakfast, that would be wonderful. And thank you, because Kelly is doing the good work for Resistance Radio. And we don't get Soros checks. They're lost in the mail, sure. They've never been cut. Not at all. And do follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. I'm supposed to take care of the Facebook page, and Kelly helps me with that. So thank you, Kelly. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. The show is on Facebook as West Coast Cookbook. And you can check in there and find links or whatever you need from, at least to get to where the links are. You can find it there. Yeah. Even though Zuckerberg does what he's going to do. Holocaust denier. What a weirdo. What else? Oh, speaking of which, you can also get podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, YouTube, Tumblr even, yeah, and so et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing about Sarah Sanders, the presser with Sarah Sanders, the scrum, is that she intimated that, yeah, if even Obama doesn't shut the F up, he can have his security clearance pulled too. I mean, listen, this guy, I just hope he goes to jail. I've never thought I would ever say that. Even with Nixon, I didn't think that Nixon necessarily should go to jail. Well, maybe I did. But, I thought with the sovereign heads or, whatever you want to call them, you can't just, pick those people up and throw them in jail. Kind of like what we did with Noriega. On the other hand, maybe Noriega is the apt parallel in this particular legal predicament. And, he sat, was it Leavenworth? He sat in a federal prison for a long time, known as only his prisoner number. That would be nice. Yeah. But you know what's going to happen. He's going to get the cell block, the whole floor, of a prison. And all of his henchmen will be there, and they'll have, big old spaghetti dinners and stuff. Well, nah, probably not. He's going to have Big Macs delivered with cheese. Okay, let's get on with this first article about how corrupt Ryan Zinke is. Yeah, it looks like Interior officials work to bury benefits of national monuments in order to bolster fossil fuels and logging. All right, well, logging. We need more logging. E.A. Crunden from Think Progress penned this piece. Documents released by the Department of Interior and then retracted a day later because oops, who put this out here? Oops. Reveal that agency officials dismissed evidence that public lands provide numerous benefits in favor of prioritizing fossil fuel interests along with ranching and logging. Yeah, thousands of emails sent between Interior Department officials last year dismissed the benefits of establishing national monuments. The Washington Post first reported yesterday, including evidence of an uptick in tourism and archaeological discoveries. Well, those have no real value. Actually, you know what? They do. They have a monetary value, and they, in the end, make a lot more than tearing the thing apart. Under Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, the agency intentionally tailored a survey of protected sites, emphasizing instead the value of fossil fuel extraction and other industry endeavors. The Interior Department released the documents last week in response to a FOIA request, or FOIA requests, sending them to journalists and advocacy groups on July 16th. The agency removed the communications a day later, saying they had been posted in error. Do not remember what you just saw. It appears that we inadvertently posted an incorrect version of the files for the most recent National Monuments production. We are requesting that if you downloaded the files already, to please delete those versions. Yeah, they said an error. Oh no, we sent the truthful one? I don't know. I remember the day when people kept 2 books, when their businesses, one for the bank so they can get a lot of money. Oh yeah, I'm making millions. Look, lend me money. And then one for the government where you go, oh man, I'm so poor I need to get food stamps. Kind of sounds like what's going on here. Old school thinking, indeed. The briefly released emails contain numerous redactions relating to a review of 27 national monuments requested by Trump in April of 2017. In response to Trump's request, Zinke, who once pledged that selling off our public lands is a non-starter, and conducted a 4-month review. The final result was a recommendation to shrink at least 10 monuments and modify 6 others. See, these guys just say what needs to be said. Oh, we're not going to sell off those monuments. Right after he talked to a bunch of fossil fuel and logging and ranching interests saying, don't worry, we're going to sell off the monuments and you get them. Okay, and then Tronc has shrunk 2 of those 10 monuments, Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante in Utah, while leaving room to alter more. Yep. So a lot of people have been impacted by this, not to mention the actual people who live there. I think they're called indigenous peoples. Been there for like millennia. But we don't care about them. Never have. The fact that the Trump administration places no value on the booming recreation economy that generates over $887 billion annually is no surprise to those who have been watching their shameful record of exploiting our public lands over the last 2 years, and that's by Senator Cantwell. Research has shown that counties around monuments often benefit economically and culturally after federal designation, but under Zinke, the department has worked to scale them back regardless, especially thanks to industry lobbying. Well, I guess in their mindset, the fossil fuel and logging people just, are better competitors on the lobbying battlefront, and maybe the recreation industry needs to, get a few Russian honeypots to work for them. Josh Israel of Think Progress brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Well, it looks like Republicans are hoping that their voters, and all voters, they actually think that all voters are like their voters, but they're counting on the lack of information, the lack of cultural memory, let alone institutional memory, okay? That old Gore Vidal moniker, American amnesia, where people can't remember what happened last week, let alone what happened years ago. Okay? So, and in this case, they can't even remember what happened last week, and they're counting on the fact that their voters, that whole Obamacare repeal and replace argument, well, that didn't go over very well, and it's still not. People are very angry about that. Even their voters. Though they may not know why. They'll blame Obama for it, of course. They always do. But it looks like a survey of candidates' issue pages on their campaign literature, they've decided to repeal and replace their repeal and replace rhetoric. Indeed. Once upon a time, Republicans made Obamacare an albatross for Democrats and made their vow to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act as a centerpiece of their 2010, 2012, 2014, and 2016 campaigns. Then they got control of government and repeatedly failed to keep that promise as the law's popularity hit all-time highs. And they continue. They've sabotaged it so much to the point of actually not paying their bills. Yep. So some of the candidates who have decided to repeal and replace the repeal and replace rhetoric include Governor Rick Scott of Florida, Attorney General Josh Hawley of Missouri. These are all Republicans, by the way. Attorney General Patrick Morrisey of West Virginia, Representative Martha McSally of Arizona, former Sheriff Joe Arpaio. How can he be rid of that felon? Of course, he's from Arizona. Marsha Blackburn, they say Republican, but I think she's a Russian from Tennessee. John James from Maine. Sandy Pensler from Maine also. And let's see, Kevin Nicholson of Wisconsin, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith of Massachusetts, Senator Debbie Fisher of New Hampshire. Or no, is that New Hampshire? I believe so. And even Ted Cruz of Texas. These candidates' desire to keep the issue away from the fore is understandable. A PPP poll released Monday found that voters preferred by a 56-40 majority of generic congressional Democratic candidates who want to strengthen the Affordable Care Act over Republican candidates who want to repeal it. They'll take any generic Democrat by 56-40 to make the ACA even stronger.
Dansez maintenant sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Dansez maintenant et jetez vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
Okay, finishing up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an offering by Addie Baird, also of Think Progress, who tells us that dozens of reporters lost their jobs yesterday, and the future of local media in New York looks bleaker than ever. Not just New York. Tronc, publishing company and enemy of local news everywhere, sunk its claws into the New York Daily News yesterday, laying off half the editorial staff and carving out the heart of local news in the U.S.'s largest city. Staffers received an unsigned, nameless email from Tronc's talent and engagement team Monday. That's what they think of journalism. Of course, on the other hand, is the New York Daily News, well, yeah, okay, come on, they're sort of like journalism, yellow journalism. Okay, this nameless email, which included the announcement that the news would be cut 50% of their editorial staff as part of an effort to transform the New York Daily News into a truly digitally focused enterprise. What? Clickbait? It's got to be clickbait. We are refocusing much of our talent on breaking news, especially in the areas of crime, civil justice, and public responsibility, the email said. We will, of course, continue to cover local news, sports, and other events, but our approach will evolve as we adapt to our current environment. Oh, yeah, I bet. Well, as one news reporter told CNN, generic from Tronc, perfect, death by faceless hacks. Study Hall first reported the impending cuts last week, as well as the fact that editor-in-chief Jim Rich was in the process of resigning or had already quit his post. The nameless email Monday confirmed that Rich will be departing. He's actually probably part of The Departed. It is, as Rich tweeted yesterday, a good day for people who hate democracy and think local governments should operate unchecked and in the dark. Yeah, what does local news do? They report on the local news, even local government. Rich also changed his Twitter bio yesterday from Daily News editor-in-chief to just a guy sitting at home watching journalism being choked into extinction. Well, it's still a sad day. Yeah, their headlines were cheeky, and but they took on and poked a finger in the eye of the high and mighty, which is what journalism is supposed to do, I thought. All right, let's get to our break, and we'll come back and go through weather from around the world, and we'll finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Annie Sneed.
Humans and elephants don't always get along. In Africa and Asia, elephants damage infrastructure, farmers' crops, and natural habitat critical for other species. If an elephant becomes a problem, humans may kill it. So local people and conservationists are trying to find better ways to keep elephants away from sensitive places. Now, researchers think they have a good tool to deter elephants: honeybee pheromones.
Elephants deplore being stung in the trunk. It's an extremely sensitive organ that they have. Imagine being stung in your nose by a bee and multiply that by a few thousand times.
Mark Wright, a professor of entomology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Kenyan farmers already know that if they hang live beehives around their farms, they will repel elephants.
The problem is logistically, how do you manage hundreds or thousands of hives if you have a huge area to protect? And then the idea came up to look at the alarm pheromones, which are chemicals that the bees release to launch an attack on something that's marauding their hive.
Because elephants have a highly developed sense of smell, Wright and his team thought they might be able to use the bees' chemical alarm signal to affect elephant behavior. So the researchers tested out a synthetic blend of chemicals that mimics honeybees' alarm pheromones. In Greater Kruger National Park in South Africa, the team hung white socks treated with a synthetic mixture as well as untreated control socks around an elephant watering hole, and then observed the animal's behavior.
The elephants are really curious organisms. They'll walk along and see something that's out of the ordinary, like a white sock hanging on a branch in the environment, and they'll inspect it. And if it's not treated with the alarm pheromones, they'll go up, pick it up, throw it around, try and taste it and things like that. And in the case of the treated ones, we found that they would show immediate signs of unease or uncertainty, and they'd eventually back off from them. They'd never, or very seldom, would they go and pick them up and play with them.
The study's in the journal Current Biology. Next up, the researchers plan to refine the synthetic pheromone mixture in order to get an even stronger avoidance response from elephants. That way, these remarkable animals will stay far away from wherever they should not be going, and both elephants and humans can coexist a bit more peacefully.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Annie Sneed.
This is 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Slavery was not confined to the South. It was well entrenched in the North. New York and New Jersey retained significant slave populations. Even in the late 1790s, 1 in 5 New York City households kept domestic slaves, while slaves worked on the farms on many Hudson River estates, along with white tenant farmers. Northern founders and framers were no less conflicted about slavery, although some took a more active role in trying to end it. Benjamin Franklin began, as early as 1729, printing Quaker tracts against slavery and the slave trade. In his later years, Franklin became a courageous, outspoken president of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society. Nonetheless, as biographer Edmund Morgan has noted, not until late in life did it, slavery, begin to trouble his conscience. John Adams never owned a slave. He denounced slavery as a foul contagion in the human character. Even so, Adams did not always translate his beliefs into practice. As a lawyer, he occasionally defended slaves, but as a politician, he made no effort to loosen the shackles of those in bondage. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
The Koch brothers' extremist political agenda of empowering multinational corporations to reign as sovereigns over the majority will of the people has always been inextricably entwined with the profiteering agenda of their wholly owned $100 billion a year industrial conglomerate. The brothers' plutocratic view of business as government even has a name, Pompeo, as in Mike Pompeo, the Trump regime's latest Secretary of State. Years ago, while living in the billionaire brothers' hometown of Wichita, Kansas, Mike got lucky when they pumped a load of Koch capital into a business he had started, turning him into a millionaire. Then they partnered with him in another business that essentially made him a Koch Industries subsidiary. In 2010, they turned this business asset they'd created into a political asset, providing the money from Koch PAC and the backing of their right-wing front group to elect Pompeo to serve as the congressman from Koch. The brothers even installed a Koch Industries lobbyist to run his congressional office. So Mike's been a loyal Koch head, conferring with them and backing bills to advance their corporate and political fortunes. Their investment in Mike became a bonanza last year when he became Trump's yes man as the head of the CIA. And now they've hit the political jackpot, with Pompeo becoming head of the State Department, on everything from international oil deals that profit multinational giants like Koch Industries to supporting the brothers' relentless opposition to all global efforts that would restrict fossil fuel profiteers from causing more climate change. The Koch's personal political insider is now their global corporate asset. This is Jim Hightower saying, to keep up with how Mike converts Koch-headed corporatism into U.S. foreign policy, go to www.prwatch.org/topics/Koch-exposed.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Tuesday, July 24th, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger. The world of work is changing dramatically, with some saying that we are headed into a so-called gig economy, where people make a living by taking small jobs here and there. The result could be greater inequality in society and people losing out on social protection programs such as decent pensions. But, according to the International Labour Organization, the ILO, it doesn't have to be that way. Here is Guy Ryder speaking to the Center of Strategic and International Studies in Washington. Mr. Ryder is the Director General of the ILO. He is the first unionist to hold the position in the organization's 99-year history.
We feel, all of us feel, do we not, that the world of work is undergoing extraordinary transformative change. Change of a rapidity, change on a scale, it's global, and change of a profundity which we have to get a grip of. I think we all think that the world of work tomorrow is going to look substantially different from what it is today, and we have to prepare for that. We have to understand it, and we have to prepare for it. The second reason is, and I realize this is a subjective assessment, but I think many people think that the world of work is moving in the wrong direction, not the right direction, in the sense that we see growing inequality in our societies, and much of that inequality is incubated in what happens in the world of work. We are worried, in the most extreme form, this takes the form of the thesis that there's an end to work, that technology is going to render work redundant. Now, that sounds great. Wouldn't you like to have your 2-day weekend extended to 7 days? Now, I don't subscribe to the end of work thesis, but I think what we can expect is that work is going to be it's not going to disappear. It's not necessarily going to become permanently and chronically scarce, but it's going to be very, very different. It's going to be performed in ways which it was not performed in the past. I made the reference to the 5-day week, the weekend, etc. Is the employment relationship where you, as an employee, have a permanent, recognizable employer whose door you can knock on? I wonder if that's going to be. How many of us are going to be working in the gig economy? To what extent are labour contracts going to be substituted by purely commercial contracts? I want you to work for me for 2 days to deliver this product, here's the money. That's not a labour contract, it's a commercial contract. And technology can facilitate work being done anytime, anywhere, and that changes everything. There's a big debate, Dan, about is this the gig economy which is appearing, is this just a niche that will remain a niche in the world of work, or is it a precursor of what is going to become general in the future? And, there's an interesting sort of lesson in all of this. We can look at technological innovation, and here is the point I want to make strongly. With the very same technologies, and I'm thinking of the types of digital technologies which are becoming more and more present, we could create a future of work which liberates us, which gives us extraordinary opportunity to choose how we want to work, when we want to work, to reconcile our work responsibilities with private responsibilities. It could do all of those things. But at the same time, and here I quote Chancellor Merkel of Germany, it could lead to the creation of new generations of 21st century digital day labourers. It could make us work like dock workers used to work, queuing up on the dockside for a day's work, like rural workers used to queue up in the market square for a day's work. If the gig economy is to produce that, we're going the wrong way. But it could do the other thing. So here's my point. There is no future of work waiting to receive us. The future of work is what we will make of it. So it's not the result of robots, technology. It's what people like yourselves decide you want your future to be, and our capacity to convince and influence policymakers to go there.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. You can find more labor news on our website at www.radiolabor.net. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Fargus with your World in 2 minutes. A new study finds more than 40 million people are victims of modern slavery worldwide. 15 million people find themselves in forced marriages, while close to 25 million are engaged in forced labor in sectors like fishing and cocoa production. That forced labor is most rampant in parts of Africa and Southeast Asia, but when products are shipped overseas, American consumers end up buying products featuring supply chain slavery.
Modern slavery is a first world problem.
Andrew Forrest is the founder of the Walk Free Foundation, which produced the 2018 Global Slavery Index.
We are the people who are drawing in America alone, nearly $150 billion US per annum of at-risk goods, fish, cocoa, electronics, etc., where there is rank slavery in the supply chain source.
Some industries self-police against slavery and other manipulative labor practices, but Forrest said countries need to pass laws mandating supply chain transparency, even if those laws hurt corporate bottom lines.
If you're a chief executive or an investor and you're not prepared to take human rights into account now, you don't deserve to be a chief executive or an investor.
Another phenomena driving modern slavery are laws preventing migrants and refugees from escaping conflict zones and instead leave them to pile up in countries where they're vulnerable to exploitation. One such country is Libya, where African migrants blocked from reaching Europe have been filmed being sold at slave auctions run by local traders. Fiona David is the executive director for research at the Walk Free Foundation.
This is in part because of this broader systemic failure that we have to create safe ways for people to migrate. So Europe has become Fortress Europe, And I think we need to be realistic that if the United States becomes Fortress United States, we better be aware of what the consequences are going to be downstream.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. That's our daily special, folks. We have a daily special. Daily. Okay. Sort of like a theme. Yes, indeed. Okay, let's get on with the weather, and we begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is, it's currently 65 degrees. And we're going to be a tad warmer today. We're only going to go up to about 103 to 104. And then tomorrow about 108. How nice. Which then clicks the alarms and bells and whistles, and we are under an active heat advisory warning. Right now, winds are out of the south-southwest, about 1 mile per hour or less. And of course, they will increase as they normally do in just a few hours. But we'll be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then shifting tonight out of the north at their usual clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour. Okay, we're under that heat advisory, so dry conditions will continue. Grass pollen is moderate. We have moved from the dangerous level of air quality to the unhealthy level. And yes, we are under a air quality advisory as well, but out of the dangerous to just the unhealthy at 161 parts per million. Yeah, I've been making my mom wear a particle mask. And I do too sometimes. Don't tell anyone. The daytime UV index remains very high, though it has notched down a click to 8. 8, whatever, on the index. It used to be 9, but there's so much smoke in the air, it's blocking out a little bit of the UV rays, but not enough. High pressure still dominates at 29.97 inches. Visibility is down to 3 miles, so that's not good. Humidity is at 63%, and we were muggy yesterday, so it felt like it went up. Even though they say dry conditions will continue, it felt, well, muggy. Hopefully that changes. All right, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 84 degrees and sunny. Paris is 89 degrees and sunny, and they are also under an active heat advisory. There's a lot of places that don't have actual air conditioning there because they're, the buildings are really old. They're thick. The walls are thick. But usually this is the time of year when people get out of Gay Paris and head to the coast where it's at least tolerable at, 88. Rome is 91 and partly cloudy. Kiev is 80 degrees and fair. Kabul is 89 degrees and fair. Hong Kong, 80 degrees with a light rain. Tokyo is 84 degrees and partly cloudy. They have actually their heat advisory has been moved now to thunderstorms that may affect their electric grid. Heat and cold, electricity. Sydney, Australia is 59 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 56 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 80 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Starting off here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of ProPublica by Daniel Golden, who speculates that if these charges against Maria Butina are accurate, she's only the latest in a long line of Russian agents to infiltrate U.S. universities. Indeed. Under the alias Cynthia Murphy, Russian spy Lydia Grayeva attended Columbia Business School, as well she should, and ingratiated herself with a key fundraiser for Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. Guryeva's instructions from Moscow, according to a 2010 FBI complaint, were to strengthen ties with classmates on a daily basis, including professors who can help in job search and who will have or already have access to secret info. These are quotes, her instructions, and a report on their detailed personal data and character traits with preliminary conclusions about their potential vulnerability to be recruited by our service. Now, another graduate student at an urban East Coast university who similarly cultivated power brokers and political operatives is accused of being a Russian spy and taking orders from high-ranking officials in her homeland. Maria Butina, who received a master's degree in international relations this past spring from American University in Washington, D.C. Well, they put out all the good spies these days. Courted the National Rifle Association's top guns, no pun intended, and sought access to Republican presidential candidates Scott Walker and Donald Trump. She pleaded innocent last week to charges of conspiring to act as a foreign agent. Think of that. As dim-witted as Scott Walker was, they went with Donald Trump. If the charges against Butina are accurate, she is indeed only the latest in a long line of Russian spies that have infiltrated U.S. universities, dating back to the Soviet era. I remember that. I always figured that, if I was being courted for some sort of potential vulnerability, they interrogated me and got the information that they found out that they needed, and then they were gone. Huh. Almost sounds like a regular relationship. Russian intelligence understands that today's professor of international relations may be tomorrow's assistant secretary of state, and vice versa. Although cyber spying and hacking offer opportunities to glean secrets at less personal risk, the traditional strategies of human espionage persist, and sending a spy to school is prominent among them in that respect. Little has changed since 1938, when Semyon Markovich Semyonov became the first Soviet agent to enroll at MIT and made contacts vital to stealing scientific secrets. If he had just done it the regular way, he would have been part of a peer-reviewed journal, and he would have had public access to it all anyway. God, I hate these people. Always bring it down to the lowest common denominator of the human trait. So the article then goes on to list, a litany of really quite famous spies down through U.S. history, all from Russia too. One puzzling aspect of this case is the seemingly slapdash tradecraft compared to Russian intelligence's usual standards. By contrast, now Guryeva at the top funneled names of potential Columbia recruits to Moscow Center via radiograms or electronic messages concealed by special software. Butina's lawyer said, she simply took an interest in American politics, and she's not a Russian agent. I don't know, maybe she's just a consultant.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout. c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Frank Palmieri of the History News Network brings us this last offering at the chef's table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In seeking to understand Trump's rise to power, historians have investigated parallels with those of Hitler and Mussolini. However, striking similarities from almost 350 years ago with another ruler who secretly colluded with a foreign enemy have not yet been noted. In 1670, Charles II of England, whose father had been tried by Parliament and executed in 1649 as a tyrant who waged war against his own subjects, concluded a secret agreement with France, England's most powerful rival and long-standing enemy. According to the terms of the secret Treaty of Dover, which were known only to two of Charles's closest advisors, Charles agreed to declare himself Catholic and to make England a Catholic country, as well as to aid Louis XIV in his planned war of aggression against the Dutch Republic. In return, Louis paid Charles annual subsidies amounting to the equivalent of about $250 or $500 million per year, in today's dollars, by the way, a sum that Charles used largely for his own lavish expenses, including paying off his numerous mistresses. Charles began to make good on his religious commitment to Louis through the Declaration of Indulgence in 1672, which suspended penal laws against Catholics and dissenters. On the military side, Parliament reluctantly agreed to finance the first year of the war with the Dutch, although only in exchange for a repudiation of the Declaration and passage of a Test Act, which excluded Catholics from all public offices. Well, I don't know. I was baptized a Catholic. Is this so bad? We want to take over everything from within. Anyway, take your pagan gods, adopt them as our own, and subvert people's minds that way. It's an old, tried and true practice. It works. Well, the article goes on and explains that the first 6 months of the Third Anglo-Dutch War brought England only losses in naval battles of lives and treasure, and some of Charles' ministers began to leak the religious terms of the secret treaty to members of Parliament. At the same time, England was flooded with thousands of copies of pamphlets from Holland, accurately accusing Charles of wanting to make England Catholic in collusion with the French king. With public sentiment having turned strongly against the war in late 1673, Parliament refused to vote a war budget for the following year, and Charles was forced to make a separate peace with the Dutch, in which England gained nothing. Thus, Charles sold out his country for his personal gain, pursuing a foreign policy directly the opposite of the traditional interests of the nation as a result of a secret deal with the country's enemy. Instead of opposing the expansionary ambitions of Catholic France, he acted as though he was allied with England's rival, as indeed he was. History will not treat this fellow kindly. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but Netroots Radio broadcasts on for breaking news. We'll visit with you tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, speaking of Catholics. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day for all the breaking news, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.